Yes. Chatting Up the Chick is back again with you, Chris the Chick, here at Cluckingham Palace, and as you can tell by my excited voice, this is a special edition. Now, where's that funky music? Where's that crazy cymbal? Yeah, whatever. So, if as 6 of you would know, I think that's my last count of listenership, I partook in the Grand Tour Aotearoa here in New Zealand this past March. Well, it's the 30th of March here, so it's still March. For those who haven't listened to any of the shows before, it's basically a bike touring 3,000 kilometer Odyssey of epic proportions, and now I've done it, I can certainly say epic. I've managed to have a few days to kind of ruminate on this whole trip, like what it meant to me, the enormity of what I just did, and surprisingly how fresh my legs are. That's the first thing everyone asks. They're like, how are your legs? So, hey, my legs are fine, it's my bum. That's where the problem lies, literally. But yeah, I've now had a few days to kind of relax and really kind of think about what this whole trip was about. I want to give you kind of an overview of the trip, the stories. There's some stories. Obviously, there's always stories on something like that, and just a kind of, I'm hoping that by kind of telling this story, this will motivate someone to do something different in their life. I've already just spoken to my brother. Hey brother, hope you're listening. And he's already said how envious he was of me. Not that I did it to make him envious, but it's inspired him to want to do something of the same ilk, but obviously not here in New Zealand. It would be over in Europe. So before we get started, I've put together a little video package just to kind of give you a taster of what I just experienced in the last month. I'm going to actually create a bigger, longer version, but this is just to give you a taster and allow you to kind of understand what I'm going to talk about as we go in. Here it is. Yes.
Right. So we're at the stars, and looking at the side, hang on, you gotta go this way. It's actually only 1,400 kilometres, but we're gonna ride 3,000 of them. And you can see we are definitely at the start. There's the lighthouse. Thank you to Mum and Dad who've driven us and fed us and kept us going.
scary memories. There was a few times my sphincter was pulsating, but it's part and parcel of doing a massive tour like that. So let's just jump straight into it. So on the 1st of March, we started up in Cape Reinga. Big shout out to Glenn's mum and dad. They looked after us for a couple of days beforehand. Did a little training run over in Russell. Stayed there back for a couple of days. They sorted us out with some slices for the first couple of days, which was much needed, especially when the first day of riding, you jump onto 90 Mile Beach and you're faced by a headwind. My word, that I, oh, I've never experienced a baptism of fire. I think that's the best way of kind of describing it. Like the 90 Mile Beach. It's it can be very demoralizing, especially when you have a headwind and you're cycling along a beach that seems like it's never going to end for hours upon hours. And stupid me, I totally underestimated water consumption. I ran out of water pretty early on that beach, and it wasn't until about 3/4 down we managed to scamper into a camping site that wasn't open, and we managed to find a tap and fill ourselves up. That was a God-saving moment because man, I was dying for some H2O. Apparently, we was quite lucky because we spoke to some people on the trip, and they went to the same campsite and they were ushered off quite forcefully by a woman who owned the camp. So we were we were actually quite lucky. Maybe she just got bored of ushering people off because we got there quite late, and we was actually at one point the last people on the route, showing on the tracker. So yay for us, we were last. So we moseyed in to Aotearoa, which I think it was a YHA type of motor camp, and it was actually probably the coolest accommodation we stayed at, even though we tented. It was such a cool place. It was like a mini little rainforest, had palm trees, cabbage tree. It had it just looked really quite a cool place. And they were playing 90s music in the bathrooms. So how can you complain with that? There's me showering, singing along to Aswad. That was different. That was a different kind of experience. A happy one. I'm not gonna lie. It was very happy. The second day continued the baptism of fire because we then. And by the way, I'm not going to go through day by day, but the first 3 days were probably the most intense because we was under time constraint basically. The second day we only did 125 kilometers, but at the same time we did 2,500 meters of elevation climb, which on your second day, like in the heat as well, subtropical heat, I no wonder why I lost 7 kilos over this trip. Man, that was tough. That was tough. But the highlight of that day was we got to Tane Mahuta, the big Kauri forest, Waipua forest, and as we was got to the top of the hill, it was becoming dusk. So we was actually going down the roads through the forest, um, whilst the light was fading. That was pretty cool. That was a cool visual. Light. There was like a light scattering of rain, barely enough to make you put a raincoat on, but that was a cool experience. Um, and then the third day, we had to work hard to get down to Potu Point to catch the last ferry of the trip. Otherwise, you'd have to go all the way around the state highway, which would have been horrible having rode on some state highways on this trip, and the traffic can be quite unforgiving. Um, but that was fun. Not in the sense of the riding, because there was times, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush. We got off the saddle, we got off the steed, and we walked that bad boy. Like that's how tired we got. Yeah, so I'm not ashamed to say that we actually got off and we had a little walk just to give our butts a good good rest. But there was one of the um, cool moments of the trip was we was going down this random uh, gravel road. And by the way, I hate gravel. Gravel roads belong in the bin. You know what I'm saying? Like I hate gravel roads. I You can't imagine the amount of lube we had to use on our chain because of bloody gravel roads. I'm I hate gravel roads. I hate them. Chris, relax. I'm relaxed. Thank you. Anyway, we was heading down a gravel road, and two young men, probably like mid-teens, 15, 16, pulled up alongside Glenn and I and asked if they could ride with us. It was a little bit weird. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like middle of nowhere. Two random kids want to ride with us. Anyway, what it turned out to be is we got to the top of the hill and they had a house on the hill. And they were giving riders fresh water, watermelon, grapes. They were, and it was like the most welcoming point of the trip at that point because it'd been tough. Like again, the baptism of fire, and to have this moment where you've got these kids giving you food and water. It was heaven sent. You know what I'm saying? It was heaven sent. Um, and apparently they've been doing it for the last 6 years since the start of the TA March challenge. And yeah, fair play to them. Like they went all out. And big shout out to those kids. Can't remember their names, but they were Northland's finest. That's all I can say about that. They were Northland's finest. The the rest of the trip got more easier. Well, let's say easier. It was more relaxed after that because we weren't under any time constraints. We managed to go through Auckland, spent the night with Glenn's mum and dad again, and then we headed into the heart and guts of the North Island. Went to Miranda, had a nice hot pool, and that's where we met quite a few people that we would see further on down in the trip. But before I go any further, there's two people I need to mention on this trip, and that is Dave and Derek King, or known as the Kings. Now, they were kind of our nemesis, but in a good way. They were our nemesis on this trip. So after the first night, when we finished the grueling beach run, we actually pitched our tents right next to them. But because we got there at dark, we never really had the opportunity to kind of introduce ourselves and chat. And they were the kind of people that would get up at 6:30 in the morning, and they would leave the campsites and whatever before 8 o'clock. Whereas Glenn and I, we're more relaxed. We get up about 8 and then leave sometime between 9 and 10. No wonder why we was always fighting against the elements and the lack of light in the evening. But the Kings, uh, for the whole time we did the trip, we was crossing each other's paths all the time. We would turn up, at, we wouldn't see them for like maybe 2 days, and we'd turn up to a random campsite. There they were, and it got to the point where it became a bit of a competition. It was like, where are the Kings? We've got to get in front of the Kings. But these boys were, well, they weren't even boys. They were fully grown men. they were over they were over 5 foot, I'm sure. Um, they were in their mid 60s and they were units. Like they just pounded on and on. They were smashing out the K's. We thought they were always at least 2 or 3 days ahead of us, but maybe that's a testament to us because we managed to keep up with them. But I always remember on the second day, one of the Kings um, realized, and this is also a testament to like how difficult the first few days were. He was shot. He was done. He was like, I can't do this anymore. And they stopped off at a health centre and they pitched their tent in this random little town behind the health centre on some nice grass. And it was quite interesting because Glenn and I were like, oh, poor men, like they're gonna be done. Like it looks like he's done. That must have, you know, It's a shame they won't be able to see the rest of the journey. But testament to them again, they carried on, and we finished within, I think it was half an hour of each other in Bluff, and they got there before us. We planned it that way, obviously, because we're nice. We wanted them to have the glory and the satisfaction of getting there before us. But they did wait around for us when we came in, and fair play to them. So if you're listening, Derek and Dave, big shout out to you boys. Well done, and see you on the road again. I'm sure next time I go camping, I'll be looking out to see if you're there. But yeah, this that was like a side story of the trip, the Kings, yeah, the nemesis, our nemesis. So anyway, get back to the story. So we was in Miranda, we had some hot pools. Then we started heading down through the guts of the North Island down towards Mata Mata, doing the Horaki cycle trail, which was boring, so boring. But yet, after doing all those hills, it was nice to be on the flat, even though I hate flat riding. It does no good for my butt, you know what I'm saying? All that flat riding. I'm sure I grew two new arseholes. I'm almost positive. Um, but we headed towards Mata Mata after going. Did we go through Peroa? Can't remember. But anyway, this is where the story becomes interesting again. So I have to introduce you to the next person. I'm not going to give their name away because I just don't want to. I don't want to kind of create something out of nothing, if that makes sense. So I'm going to call him Bobby, Fun Bobby, because because I was watching Friends yesterday, so he could be Fun Bobby. So Fun Bobby and his mate and his brother were riding together, and unfortunately, his brother had a bit of an accident in Auckland, so he went to hospital. I'm hoping that he was supposed to continue again with him in Wellington, but um, we got talking to Fun Bobby on on the ferry from Poto Point over across the Kaipara Harbour, and this guy, he's obviously a self-made man, made a lot of money, um, doing a lot of good stuff now, like building schools in India, coming up with technology to help stop child trafficking in Thailand, and all manner of things. So we was quite interested in him because like he obviously using his wealth to do good in the world. So when we was getting towards Mata Mata, Glenn and I decided to stop on one of our many stops. I'm not gonna lie, most people would grind through and get the K's done. Glenn and I, we would stop every hour, if not every half hour. Like we was always keen for a stop. So we've stopped down like a side road. We're not even on the actual track anymore. We just stopped off down a side road, and we're kind of lying there having a 1 square meal because that's all we ate was 1 square meals. And we see the lads riding past. So I give a shout out, Fun Bobby, even though it's not his name. Lads over here. So they cycle over to us and we get chatting. And Fun Bobby turns around to us and says, how do you guys fancy a day off tomorrow? And we're like, oh, why? What's going on? He said, I'm going over to me batch in Whitianga. And I'm like, oh, because we're in Mata Mata. That's back in the opposite direction towards the Coromandel. He's like, yeah, no, we'll pick you up in the helicopter from Mata Mata Aerodrome. And I'm like, pick us up in the helicopter? You what? I don't quite understand. What do you mean? And he's like, oh, look, just get yourself to the aerodrome at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we'll pick you up and we'll bring you over to the batch. So I'm kind of looking at Glenn, and Glenn's looking at me, and we're like, is he for real? Like, what's he chatting about? So anyway, we go to Mata Mata, where at the place we're staying, and he sends a message to us like, are you going to come? So we're like, why not? Like, let's do it. Like, it sounds absolutely absurd, but why not? So we get up in the morning and this this was the only time we actually got up early. We got up at like 6:30, all excited. The aerodrome was it was about 20 k's away from where we were staying, so we made sure we had plenty of time to get there. So we got there about 8:30, still about half an hour out. Hid our bikes, and we're kind of sitting there at this aerodrome. Like, there's nothing there. It's like one of those real kind of um, just a grass patch that you can use for like real light aircraft, but there's no aircraft or anything. There's one guy um, in his little, I don't know what you would call it. It's like a paragliding type thing with a big parachute on the back with the big, yeah, single engine. Anyway, so we're chatting to him and we're telling him about what's going on. So anyway, it comes to 9 o'clock, and Glenn and I look at each other. We're like, mate, this has got to be a ruse. There's no way a helicopter is coming to pick us up to take us to Whitianga. What the crap? Anyway, as we're saying, you could hear in the background this sound of a helicopter coming closer and closer and closer, and it comes and it lands in the aerodrome. And we're sitting there looking at each other, going, "It's a helicopter." So guy gets out. He's like, "Chris and Glenn, yeah, yeah." So we wander off into the helicopter. This was the first time I'd ever been in the helicopter. I was a little bit apprehensive, to be honest. I was like, I've never been in one of these. Like, I've flown in planes left, right, and centre, but never been in a helicopter. So we take off. We fly over the range over towards Tauranga, land at Tauranga Airport, which is a relatively busy airport for New Zealand standards. And we're just like cutting across the runway and landing there. And you see Fun Bobby and his mate come running with a with a bottle of milk and some coffee, and they jump in. We all say hello, and off we go. We fly to over to his batch in Whitianga. Uh, Hopefully you'll see some pictures. I'll put some pictures up showing you where we went. And the guy lands the helicopter in someone's back garden, like literally in a, a grass area that could be no more than 20, 30 square meters. Like, it's tiny. And he's like 3 or 4 meters off the rock edge of the cliff. And we're just like, man, this is nuts. So we go up into Fun Bobby's batch, which was quite humble actually. I was thinking like this like massive mansion, but it's quite a humble little batch. Obviously, for my standards, I was quite impressed because I live in a two-bedroom, 90 square meter house, so anything anything's going to be impressive to me. Yeah, and we have coffee. We're up there because he wanted to check the work because he was having a bunker built and he wanted to check the work and make sure it was all going good. So we're sitting there having coffee, chatting. Finish the coffee, get back in the helicopter, and we're flying off back to Tauranga. Um, but at this point, on the way back to Tauranga, I'm sitting in the front of the helicopter. Your man's like, "Oh, do you want to sit in the front, Chris? It's there's more leg space." I was like, "Oh, sweet, cheers." Anyway, the pilot turns around to me. He's like, "Chris, are you a soft touch?" And I'm like, "Am I a soft touch?" I'm thinking to myself, "Yeah, people take advantage of me. I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm a soft touch." he's, he's like, all right. He grabs my phone, hands it to Glenn. He goes, grab hold of the joystick in front of you. It's the helicopter's like a dual control, and there I am. He's teaching me how to fly the helicopter. So I start flying the helicopter for 5-10 minutes. It was nuts. I'm like, this is my first time in a helicopter, and I'm flying it. Woohoo! Like, yeah, it was a cool experience. Anyway, we dropped him off in Tauranga, then flew back over the ranges back to Matamata, and it couldn't have been any longer than, I think we got back about 1 o'clock. So 4 hours. We was gone for 4 hours. We land back in Matamata. He drops us off, flies off, and Glenn and I just look at each other going, "That was so random, but so cool." Like, it was just like one of those great experiences where it happened due to like crazy circumstances. Like if his brother hadn't got injured, then there wouldn't be enough room on the helicopter for both Glenn and I. If I wouldn't have called out to them as they were cycling past, they wouldn't have seen us and they would never have asked us. It was, yeah, it was it was just real random circumstances that meant that it happened. But a cool experience. So I thank Fun Bobby. You know who you are, Fun Bobby. I thank you, sir, for not only the experience but also the great work that you're doing through your charities that you have set up. So well done, my friend. Well done. There was two things about this trip that I'm going to have fond memories of, and that is firstly the chamois stops. Now anyone who's a cyclist and does long distance cycling understands the importance of the chamois cream. And I think overall between the two of us we must have gone through about 4 pots, or those 100 ml, whatever you call them. We definitely chamoised up our groinal and butt area on a probably hourly basis by the end of it. For the people who don't know what chamois cream is, it's basically a wonder cream that stops your bum from chafing and keeps it nice and moist. There's nothing worse than a chafed up bottom. As soon as you allow that to happen, your cycle trip is done. Like, it's done. And there was one moment, probably about a week in, where I wasn't using enough chamois cream, and that was it. Like, I was getting close to almost having to call it a day. But I rubbed vigorously. And the funny thing about chamois stops is after time you kind of lose your inhibitions to some degree, because I don't know if people have noticed, but when you're traveling through New Zealand roads, there's these little tin sheds everywhere. I'm not sure if that's just something, a bygone era, or if they were put there specifically for people to get out of the elements if it was pissing down with rain or whatever. But they were wonderful for us, because we'd stop, hide behind the shed, get a gloop of cream, get the hand down the pants and rub vigorously. Well, it wasn't vigorously, but you know, I'm just playing up for the story. But you got to the point where you was just like, I don't need a shed anymore. You know, people will be driving past and you'd be fondling yourself with chamois cream. There was one point, one guy stopped and he was chatting to us in his car, and we was chatting back, and there's me just blop, gloop of cream, and just putting my hands down my pants and just taking the opportunity to chamois up. So I'm kind of glad it's finished now, because I won't be so blatant in front of people. And the second thing is the amount of possessions I lost on this trip is unreal. I had the great idea of creating like a PVC pipe to stick on one of my forks, just to be able to kind of carry tinned food easily. And obviously tinned food's quite heavy, so it was kind of nice to have it on the front. If I tried to put it in any of the other bags, the bags themselves would be too heavy for them. But it turned out to be a nightmare. For one, I didn't create a lid for it. So anything I put in there, if I hit a big bump or was going downhill and we hit some rocks and whatnot, things would just jump out, and I lost so much stuff. And also I'd put stuff on my front, thinking that, well, I can see it, so obviously if it disappears I'll be able to grab it quickly before it fell off. But that wasn't the case either, because you're concentrating on the road. But here's a list of things I lost. Lost 2 bananas, 2 apples, a charger cable for my phone, a pot of sun cream, a tent bag, an iPod charger. I lost one sock, a T-shirt. I lost my bike lock at one point, but someone kindly returned it to me. And I lost four dirty rags that I was using to kind of clean my chain, to re-lube it and stuff like that, and clean areas that were pretty dirty. And the best one of all was I bought a pair of cycling shorts before we went on the trip from an op shop. It cost me $2. I wasn't going to use cycling shorts initially because I had a padded seat cover, but I decided to get these cycling shorts. And at the end, Glenn and I went for a quick little dip in the Southern Ocean, and it's bloody freezing, I tell you that, even at that time of year. And so it was soaking wet. We drove into Bluff to have a feed and a celebratory beer at one of the pubs. So I took, my intention was to take the cycling shorts, clean them up, and then I was going to frame them as like a memento for this trip. But I hung them on some railings just next to where we parked up, and I completely forgot about them. So now they're either in someone's dirty laundry, or they're still sitting on those railings because someone thinks someone's going to come and pick them up. So if anyone's in Bluff, they want some free $2 cycling shorts, help yourself. Help yourself. Oh man, funny times, funny times. I could almost stop the podcast there and allow that to be the final comment. You know what I'm saying? Because that was a highlight. That really was a highlight of the trip, and it came within the first week. So we was expecting some big things to come, which did, but not as extravagant as that. After Mata Mata, we headed into the Timber Trail and the Whanganui National Park, which kind of changed the whole environment of what we'd done before. So it started to become more of a single track, more of a mountain biking track, and Glenn was loving. He was like, I've never seen a man so wet for hills that go downwards. He was pumping down. And this is a good time to talk about Glenn and his downhills. Now, Glenn, he's not fond of the uphill. Um, Not fond of it at all. But fair play to him. If there's a hill to do, he will conquer it, and he will try and conquer it without stopping. So fair play to his tenacity to get up those hills. But my word, going downhill, the man has no fear. The man has no fear. He clocked up a top speed. Now, bear in mind it was on sealed asphalt, which I'm not taking away anything from it. It's still a bloody quick speed. He clocked 87.4 kilometers an hour. That is bloody fast. Like that was, I would be, again, going back to the sphincter analogy, that would be pulsating like a quick heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? Um, even on these single tracks, I think at one point I like to say we, but it was more Glenn. But I think we hit 60 kilometers an hour, which is nuts as well because you got rocks and pebbles and loose soil all over the place. So one false move and you literally are eating dirt. But these single tracks were cool. They were quite challenging, especially the Whanganui National Park. There were some spots that were pretty dicey, uh, even going up. Like we heard one story of a guy who slipped off the edge because that was how dicey it was, and he fell down about 5 meters down the edge with his bike. And not surprising, like that was it. Mentally, he checked out. He was done. He was like, once I'm getting to Whanganui, I'm done with this trip. I think he lived in Palms to the north. So it just goes to show like how dangerous it was. We even saw a bike that had been left there, so I could only imagine that someone was like, "Sod this, I'm done," just walked out, left the bike. After the single trail, got to Whanganui, and then after that, it was kind of we got a jet boat down the river as well. That was quite cool to to witness the mighty Whanganui River. And then after that, we kind of cut across towards Masterton and down towards Wellington. And there wasn't really that much to talk about. Uh, the Ramataka Ranges was quite cool, going through the old railway line, going through the tunnels and whatnot, and kind of just thinking about like how a train could go up those hills. Like there's some great feats of engineering there, if a little bit useless to some degree. But there was that across that stretch was the only time of the whole 27 days we was on the track. It rained for 30 minutes, and that was it. That was the only rain we got. We were so fortunate with the weather. Like it was unbelievably. Like yes, there were days when we had headwinds and whatnot, and it was challenging, especially Wellington. Wellington did not disappoint. Oh my word! It was like full gale in your face. I loved every second of it. Glenn hated it. Going back to the whole thing about the hills, Glenn hated the hills. He hated a headwind, which for me, I love the hills. A headwind is like a hill. So every time there was a headwind, Glenn would slow down to a crawl and I would just do my thing, you know what I'm saying? So we got to Wellington, spent the night there, got the boat across to Picton. Then we headed across towards Nelson, where we did another Barry the Bastard, the Munga Tapu track, which the last 2 kilometers of this track was unrideable. Like it was just so steep, so much pebbles and loose soil, and you couldn't ride up it. Like I could imagine some people could, but it was very taxing. Got to the top of the mountain, blowing a gale at the top. It was getting dark. Had to head down the other side. Got really steep. Glenn was creaming himself again. He loved it. That was one of maybe 3 or 4 night rides where we had to ride in the dark to get to our place. But we ended up staying in the park because the motor camp we wanted to stay at was closed. Then we headed across to Nelson, Richmond, Wakefield, down towards Murchison, Lakewood, Aotearoa, where we got absolutely smashed by sandflies. Thank you, sandflies. Really appreciated your biting touch. Really, really enjoyed that. I did laugh though at the North Islanders who were doing the trip, who haven't ever been to the West Coast. I've never seen so many people in their tents so early. That was funny. Then we head down to Murchison, where I think was it? No, it was after Murchison. Glenn's wife met us in a camper van. So Glenn got some nice sleeps after that, staying in the camper van, even though I was still in the tent. You bastard, Glenn. Though it was a welcome relief to see someone else, and she brought brownies, so I was quite happy with that. Glenn we then went down to Springs Junction. At this point, I was struggling. Like I'd spent the last 2 or 3 nights having terrible sleep, and I was running dramatically out of energy, getting grumpy. My the mental side of me was giving up. I was like, oh, we're in the South Island now. I can just get a bus to back to Christchurch and I'll be done. But unfortunately, I managed to get a good night's sleep and that soon disappeared. But there was at one point when Glenn took us up the wrong road because we were staying at Marble Hill dock campsite, but he took us up the wrong way. And I was cursing the name of Glenn, cursing his name. Oh, I was so angry. Oh, it's fun to look back though. Then Glenn did the Big River um, trip, which is supposed to be epic. I missed out on it because again I was so tired. I just went round to Ikamotua where we were staying for the night, which I'm glad I did because I got there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and just had myself a Guinness because it was a couple of days after Paddy's Day, and Glenn got in about 9 o'clock that night. But he was pumped. He was so pumped. He loved every second of it. We then from Ikamotua we did our biggest day where we cycled the best part of 160 kilometers to Hokitika through the Wilderness Trail. That was cool. We were so pumped when we got to Hokitika though. It was, oh mate, that was such a great day. I feel so energized. Paid for it the next day though, because then we had to make our way down to Franz Josef, and yeah, we was in a little bit of pain having to do another 140 plus k day, and then the next day was even worse. We went down to Harst, and we were so slow. Like I think by 3 o'clock we'd only done about 60 kilometers, and we were supposed to do 140 again. So like, I think we rocked into Harst at about half nine, 10 o'clock, just absolutely shattered. Though we did get to see some Kia, so that was nice. Then from Harst we went over the Harst Pass. That was a bastard. That was a steep, Barry the bastard. Oh yes. And headed over towards Lake Hawawiwa, as I like to call it, uh, which was a cool campsite. They had teepees and the lot. I've got to go back there. Then we headed over to up the Crown Range, which was the highest point of the trip, best part of 1100 meters. Headed down towards Queenstown. Spent the morning and afternoon in Queenstown. Got the iron slaw across to the other side of Lake Wakatipu, and we made our way slowly um, in the back ranges down towards Invercargill, and then yeah, finished up in Bluff. 27 days later, whew, it was the last 2 days was kind of melancholy for me, um, for two reasons. One, it was sad that the journey was coming to an end. Like when you do something so epic like that, it kind of becomes a day job. You just get up, you get on your trusty steed, and you just keep pedaling, looking forward to the next cafe, getting a coffee, seeing what the cafe has, what kind of slices it has. Like if you love eating and drinking, this trip is perfect because you're constantly stopping at different places. Unless of course you're doing like 250k days, then it's just head down, bum up. You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, it was quite melancholy coming to the end of the journey, kind of taking it all in. Like the last 2 days was quite boring, like heading down through Southland. Like there was it's just like cycling in Canterbury. It's just flat and just paddocks. But the other reason I was melancholy as well is sadly, and I wanted to speak about this because it kind of gives a certain reality to life. Sadly, two people on the trip that we know of passed away from heart attacks. Um, Now, I don't think we ever came across these two guys. I don't think, but I remember riding into Bluff and just having like a sense of sorrow that two people just never made it, and their families having to go through that pain and suffering, um, through you know you could argue like it's just a cycle tour. Why risk your life? Like the one guy who passed away, he already had heart issues and he had a big heart bypass or something a few years ago. And you could argue he could not have done it and lived for X amount of years. But then you can make the same argument of, what is living? If you're not doing things that challenge you, or you're not doing things that inspire you, or whatever, then are you really living? Like, it's that conversation that's been going round and round and round for eons of time. But I just wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge the suffering and pain of the families and friends, and just acknowledge the people who did pass away, because I think it's important to remember that whatever you do in life, there are inherent risks, but it shouldn't stop you from getting out there and doing it. But hey, look, each to their own. If someone decided not to do this tour because of heart problems, hey, I would never look down upon you. Let's just call it as it is. But yes, on a happier note, it was epic. It was more than I expected. It was tough going. We did 30,000 meters of elevation climb throughout the whole 27 days. That's, to put it into perspective, that's like climbing 3.25 Mount Everests. When you put it like that, it's like, wow. Yeah, we did just over 3,000 kilometers. We probably averaged around about 120 kilometers a day. I think the most we did was nearly 160, and the least we did was like 37. That was on the last day, going from Invercargill to Bluff. We just wanted to make sure that we arrived in Bluff at a reasonable time where we could actually enjoy the moment rather than just arriving at night or whatever it might have been. So in conclusion, if you asked me, is it something worth doing? I'd say no. especially if you don't like being slapped in the face, because the first 3 days is a slap in the face. I'm not gonna lie, it was tough, but no, I joke around. It's certainly worth doing. Just the way that this whole adventure just changed from day to day was quite astounding. Like, you there was a few days where you were kind of like just trudging along and not really inspired by the scenery or anything like that. But that was only a few days. Most of it was kind of like, wow, I never realized this country had so much like this. This is pretty impressive. So yeah, no, highly recommended. You don't have to be the fittest person in the world. Obviously, a good level of fitness is something that you should aspire to have. But certainly your body adapts quickly, and within 4, 5, 6 days, our body had adapted pretty well, and we was able to do most days without any issues whatsoever. We had no bike issues, which is a blessing as well. Our steeds were good to us, and we treated them pretty badly at some points, like especially going down some of those hills. Woo! It was tough. Right, I've rabbled on 40 minutes. Holy moly! I was only hoping to do like a 20-minute podcast. Look, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about the trip, or anything. You can get me on Facebook, Christopher Chick. You can go on my email, Chris is a Chick. You can leave a message here on YouTube, or whatever platform I'm using. I'll be happy to hear from anyone. Right, wickeder. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Chris the Chick on Chatting Up the Chick. Yes.